Hey y'all, Tracy here with Just Dig It Farms. Welcome back to part 3 of our series on how to design and create your own potager garden. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the steps that I take whenever I design a new garden space. Number 1, you need to define your style, your needs, and your capabilities. I know this sounds very simple and trivial, but this is a very important step that you need to do before you ever start designing your potager garden or any garden, because your style, your needs, and your capabilities are going to determine a lot of different things in planning your garden. I had a garden and landscape design business for quite a few years, and before I would ever even meet with the client, I sent them a list of homework to do before I arrived. And this list just made our appointments go so much more efficiently. The first thing on my list for them to do before I arrived was to pull pictures from magazines, from Pinterest, from garden centers or botanical gardens, different places like that. Pull pictures that they were drawn to, that they really liked, so that I could get an idea of what their style was and how they wanted their garden to look. So that is the first thing I'm going to ask you to do. Define your style. What style are you drawn to for your garden? If you're really not sure what style you like, what you really want, the plants that you like, then this is where you need to start. So go to Pinterest. Pinterest is the best place to get ideas. I love Pinterest. Gene, not so much a fan. He says it causes him a lot of work, but I love Pinterest. It is a great platform to get wonderful ideas from. You can even create yourself a board on Pinterest and pull all of your ideas and put it in there so that you can have them all in one space to look at. You can thumb through garden magazines, go to your local nursery and look at all the different plants. Look at the pottery. You'd be surprised when you walk through the pottery section. Which style pottery are you drawn to? Are you drawn to the terracotta? Are you drawn to the more Mediterranean style pots, ceramic pots? What are you drawn to in that garden center? Take a camera with you and take pictures of the different plants that you really love, that you're really drawn to. Take pictures of the different pieces that are at the garden center that you like the different arbor structures or benches or tables and chairs or just different antique pieces or pieces in the retail store of the garden center that you really love. At Petals from the Past, my favorite garden, nursery, and farm that I used to work at for 12 years, we had different demonstration gardens set up all throughout the nursery so that you could see the plants at the different times of the year and you could see different garden layouts. If your local nursery has that, go take pictures, see which styles you really like, what you're drawn to. You can go to different botanical gardens and look around, walk around, take pictures of what you really love. When you're walking around the garden centers or you're scrolling through Pinterest or flipping through magazines, take note of what you like. Do you like the gardens that are more whimsy and free-flowing and informal, like cottage gardens? Do you like gardens that are very whimsical with bright, bold colors and sun catchers and all of these different things? Or do you like gardens that are more formal, more symmetrical? Everything is symmetrical and even and formal. I also recommend you just take a look around your home. How do you have your home decorated? Do you have your home decorated in bright, bold colors, deep, rich colors, soft, serene colors, monochromatic colors? What colors do you use within your home? How do you have your home decorated? Is it a very formal decor? Is it traditional? Is it contemporary? Is it eclectic? Is it French country? Is it cottage? Is it shabby chic? What style is your home? What fabrics do you like? What colors do you like? What pieces do you like? Do you like old antique pieces like my chest here? Or do you like more contemporary or very, very traditional pieces? All of these things, I know we're not going to be adding antique chest in our garden, but all of these things help you to define and figure out what your style is and how you want your garden to look as well. I think it is very helpful to create vision boards. I have vision boards here in my office. This is my farm vision and goal board for our farm. This one is too as well, but this also has a lot of the elements that I want included in my garden because my garden is part of my farm. But I just pulled things and ideas and color palettes that I really wanted my garden to look like, and I created this vision board, and it gave me a very clear idea of how I wanted to create my garden. So what I suggest is to print out the pictures that you took at the garden center, the nursery, wherever you went, and take the pictures that you pulled from the magazines, print off some of the pictures that you liked in Pinterest, just lay them all out and start taking a visual note of different elements that you like in the pictures and why do you like them? Why were you drawn to this picture? Is it because it's full of lavenders and pastel blues and pinks and whites and creams and you just really seem to be drawn to that color palette? You know, what do these pictures have in common? Just take and kind of dissect them and figure out why you were drawn to that. And take some of the favorite pictures that you have and create a vision board like I did back here. And it will become very clear to you what you really like, what you really want the style and the look of your garden to be, what you really don't like. Like for me, I love all colors. I like reds, greens, yellows, blues, purples, pinks, whites. I love all colors and I love the combination of all colors. But in my home and in my garden, I'm really not fond of the reds and the oranges and the yellows. I'm really not fond of those colors in my home or in my garden. I'm more drawn to the light pinks, the whites, the creams, the blues, the lavenders. I'm more drawn to those colors. Those are the colors that I really like. And if there's a orange or red dianthus or something that pops up, I usually go and pull it out because it kind of messes up my color scheme. But that's just me. Now, I love all colors in different situations, but in my home, in my space that I live in, I like to be surrounded with cool, serene, peaceful colors. I like formality and symmetrical design, but I also like asymmetrical and informal design. So I have a little bit of both of those elements in my potager garden. So by doing a vision board, or you don't have to put together a vision board, you can just create a Pinterest board and look at it and do the same thing, dissect it. But by doing this, you're definitely going to figure out what you love and what you don't love. Next question to ask is, what do you want out of this garden space? What do you want to grow? What do you like to eat? What does your family like to eat? Don't grow something that you're not going to eat. Are you wanting to grow this garden just to eat fresh out of it in the summertime? Are you going to preserve from the garden? Are you going to make salsa? What do you want to preserve? What do you want to make? Do you want an herb garden in this space? Do you want to grow just culinary herbs? You're only going to use it for cooking. Are you going to use it for medicine as well? Make a list of all of the things that you need and you want from this garden. The next thing to think about is your capabilities. What are you actually capable of doing? Do you have any health limitations? Do you have any disabilities? And it's going to be hard to manage a big garden. Well, an idea for that, you could build some raised beds that are higher, that are like 3 feet, 4 feet high, and you don't have to bend over as much. But you need to take these things in consideration. Do you have any limitations? Do you work full time and have 3 kids that play sports and music and involved in everything, and you're not going to have much time to work in this garden? You know, what level of maintenance do you want this garden to be? Can you hire somebody to help you 1 day a week, or maybe just during the real busy time when you're shoveling compost and you're planting, and the real busy time of early spring? Maybe you could hire somebody to come in and help you. Or maybe you could hire somebody once a week if you have that ability. What equipment and tools do you have? What equipment and tools will you need to buy? Do you have any gardening knowledge already? Have you grown gardens before? Or is this just all new to you and you're excited and you're ready to jump in and do it? If you're new to gardening, you need to start slow. Start off with a couple of beds and start slow, and then I promise you, it will very quickly grow into more than just a couple of beds. But if you're brand new to gardening, start off slow, start off with some easy things to grow so that you can have some quick successes. But for right now, I just want you to start thinking about all of these things. What are your capabilities? What are your limitations? How much time do you have to work on the garden? So this is your first exercise. This is your first assignment to go through and answer these 3 questions and do this little bit of homework. What is your style? What is your needs and wants from the garden? And what is your capabilities? Like I said earlier, this step is very important because these 3 things are going to determine how you design and create your garden. Number 2, dream big. List everything that you want out of this garden. Everything. Even if you think you're not going to be able to afford it or you're just not going to be able to do it, just list it anyway. Right now, you're just dreaming. You're just brainstorming and dreaming and listing everything that you want out of this garden space. Do you want a garden shed? Do you want a compost bin? Do you want a greenhouse? Do you want a pergola? Do you want arches with roses on them? Do you want beautiful iron gates entering into your garden? List the plants that you know you want to plant and include in your garden. List the materials that you want to use. Do you want to use old brick? Do you want to use cobblestone for your pathways? List those materials. Make a list of things that you have access to get free. Maybe like rocks. Do you have rocks on your property? Add those things to your list because those are things that you're going to easily be able to use, and you definitely want to include those in your plan. Just list everything that you want, because here's the thing. It's easier to have a master plan with all of these things in it than it is to build some of your garden, go down the road and figure out, hey, I actually can afford a greenhouse. But now I've got to tear down all of this fence section. I've got to mess up my garden bed to be able to get a greenhouse in here. But if you've got that on your master plan, then you can plan accordingly for that. Just like for irrigation, are you going to have irrigation in your beds? Well, you really need to go ahead and lay the irrigation pipe and everything before you start creating these spaces, and then have to come back and pull up that brick pathway because you need to dig a trench to lay your plumbing pipe. So that's why I say right now at the very beginning of the design process, list everything that you want in your garden and out of your garden. And later on, throughout the steps, we're going to get to a point where we narrow down the things that we really want in our garden. But right now, you're just dreaming and thinking of all of the possibilities. So number 3 is site analysis, observation, and determining the best location for your garden. In permaculture design, it is recommended that you observe the location that you're considering for your garden for a whole year. You're watching this space, observing this space for a whole entire year, because every season things change in that area. Like the sun is different in the summertime than it is in the wintertime. And in the rainy season, you might actually realize this is not a good place to put a garden. So it's recommended that you look at, observe, and watch your space that you're considering for your garden for a whole entire year. This is ideal, and this is not always how it's going to go, because I know you're probably anxious and ready to get your potager garden in and start growing some food and some fruit and some vegetables and some herbs. So at the very least, you do need to take some time and observe the area. And you definitely need to do a site analysis. This is going to save you a lot of mistakes, a lot of cost, a lot of issues that may come up down the road. When you're trying to figure out what is the best location for your garden, First thing you need to do is remember what we've talked about in past videos. We want a potager garden to be as close to our kitchen or our home as it possibly can be, because this is going to be a space that we're going to go to every single day. We want to have easy access to the potager garden. But you also need to consider your sun exposure. So you need to watch this piece of property where you're going to put your garden. You need to watch it throughout the day. See what your sun exposure is. Figure out where your sun rises, where it sets, what is north, what is south, what is east, what is west on your property in accordance to where you're going to put this garden. Watch this space throughout a day. How much sun do you get? Do you get the morning sun? Do you get the afternoon sun? Do you get midday sun? Do you get all day long sun? What kind of sun do you get in this space? What kind of shade do you get in this space? And you've got to remember that your sun exposure in your summertime and your sun exposure in your wintertime may be completely different. Because if you've got trees and they have no leaves on them, but then when they leaf up in the summertime, you might actually be getting more shade in this area than you thought you were going to get. And the sun exposure of an area changes with the sun solstice. So you've got to take those things into consideration as well. You definitely need to figure out your sun and your shade exposure on the area where you're wanting to plant your garden, because most of your fruits and vegetables and herbs need at least 6 hours a day to be able to produce a good fruit. You also want to take note of wind exposure. Which area, when there's a storm coming, which exposure, which area does the wind come from? You want to take note of that. You want to see if you have a big gust of winds, or is there actually, is it in a dip and there's actually a microclimate there and it's actually cooler in this dip than it is over here. So you need to watch these things and figure these things out. Where's the wind coming from? Where's your wind exposure coming from? Because if you can determine that north winds is going to be blowing in on your garden area, well, maybe you need to build a hedge or a windbreaker or a hedge over here to keep that wind from coming in on your garden. But you won't know to do that until you figure out your wind exposure. And it's always good to figure these things out in the beginning. Take a soil analysis. This is very important. Healthy soil is everything when it comes to gardening. Healthy soil equals healthy plants. Before you ever start building beds or planting anything, do a soil analysis. All you do is you just go around to different areas where you're going to be putting this garden, take a sample, a little sample of soil, put it in a Ziploc bag, mix it up, and you can send it off to, I send mine to Auburn University. You go to aces.edu and you can print out the sheet. It tells you exactly what you need to do. It tells you exactly what they need. Then you just send that soil sample that you took and your little sheet of paper that you filled out, send it to the address that they tell you to with a little bit of money. I think it costs $7, maybe $14, something like that. Send that off to the address they gave you. They'll send you back a complete breakdown and analysis of your soil, what it needs, what it's lacking, the pH of your soil, which the pH is very important. Tells you what minerals, what nutrients, everything that you need to add to your beds, to add to your soil, to be able to grow the things that you're wanting to grow. So that soil analysis is very key and important to a successful garden. Now, you also want to take note of what kind of soil do you have, the composition and the structure of your soil. My soil is very, very sandy. It's a sandy, somewhat loamy, but mostly sandy soil. And you would think for people who have a real clay-based soil, you would be jealous of that. But that sandy soil, what happens is when it rains, it just leaches through the soil super fast. So my plants have to be watered a lot because my soil's so sandy that the water just drains right through it. Any nutrients, any fertilizer, anything that I fertilize my plants with, it just leaches right through the soil and it's gone. So I have to water a lot more. I have to fertilize a lot more. So just take note of what is your soil structure. If you have a very clay-based soil, then what that does is that almost creates like a bowl, and it'll hold too much water, and then the roots of your plant will rot. So just determine what is the composition and the structure of your soil. Take this note, because this is going to be very important when you're working on building that healthy soil for your garden. Also, when you're looking at your soil, take a look, make a note of how fast it drains. What is the drainage like on that soil? Like I said, mine's quick and I have to water a lot, but yours might hold a lot of water. Are there any areas in this space that really hold a lot of water and stay wet for a long time? Make note of these areas, because this might be a spot where you could plant something that really loves a lot of water. You know, right plant, right place. So we need to determine what are those problem areas in this space so that we can work around that and work with it. Look at the terrain of your property in this area. Are there slopes? Are there dips? Are there hills? Are you going to have to build terraces, or is it just flat? Take a look at how that property lays and the terrain slopes of that property. Are there any privacy issues to take note of? Do you have a neighbor that butts up right to where you're going to put your garden, and they ride loud motorcycles, and when you're out in your garden, it's not going to be a peaceful space. It's going to be very loud, or they're always going to be right there watching you or seeing you? Just take note if there's any privacy issues. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have your garden there. It just means that maybe you're going to need to build a fence, or you're going to want to plant some tall trees right there, or something like that to create some privacy for you. But you need to take note of this on your original site analysis. What about the views? Do you have any really beautiful views that you want to make sure you keep those views open and you don't plant anything that's going to hide those views? Or do you have some really ugly views and you definitely want to hide those? Where is your closest water source to this garden? Because you're going to need to water this garden, whether it be dragging a hose pipe, or installing irrigation, or water catchment systems, rainwater catchment systems. Somehow you're going to need to water this garden. So what is your closest water source? What about an electrical source? If you decide to have a garden shed or a greenhouse, are you going to need electricity to it? So where will you be able to tie in for electricity or to tie in for water? So make notes of that on the site analysis as well. What about wildlife issues? Are you going to have a deer problem? Here on our farm, we have a lot of deer, and we have a lot of wild hogs that move through here. So that can be a problem in the garden. So we are working on building a big fence all the way around my garden, just to protect it from the deer, from the hogs, hopefully from possums, because possums and armadillos like to get in my garden and just root it up. I highly recommend that you take some time, observe the area that you're wanting to put your garden, and do your site analysis, do your soil analysis, answer these questions that we've just been talking about. Okay, y'all, I've given you 3 different exercises to do this week. The first one is to figure out your style. Figure out your wants and your needs for your garden, and be honest with yourself and figure out your capabilities and how the level of maintenance and how you're going to be able to take care of this garden. If you're unsure about your style, what you want your garden to look like, or what you even really like, then flip through those magazines, scroll through Pinterest, get your camera and go visit a garden nursery or botanical gardens. Pull the things together that you really like and create you a vision board, or pin you a board on Pinterest, and figure out what you really want your garden space to look like. The second exercise is the fun one. Just brainstorm and list everything that you want in your garden and out of your garden. The third step is to start taking some action. Go out, observe the area, figure out the sun, the shade, the wind, do a site analysis, get that sent off, Just take observation and do a site analysis of the whole area where you're wanting to put your garden. And at this point, you need to be determining exactly where you want to put your potager garden. So between now and next Thursday, go ahead and get your exercises done. Get you a measure tape, some graph paper, pencils and erasers, and a straight edge. You can just use a ruler, will be fine. And I'll see y'all back here next week, and we'll start drawing up your design plan. I hope you all had a wonderful Valentine's Day. God bless you, and I'll see you next week.